Oh. Okay. Hello everyone. Strawberry. It's very sweet. Thank you, mom, for butter strawberry for me. This is very special dinner with strawberry. Cheese strawberry. Oh.
One of the biggest mistakes that couples make when they get married. But when I met Kim, I didn't want to be like my mom and dad. Dad was a school teacher, mom was a nurse. But skills, you have to have skills. And I hated it. I hated selling. But for 4 years I struggled, and I had to stay there until I became number one. I'll sell it. I turn it to this. That's the secret.
But something that I thought was really impactful that I've not heard you explain. You said that you and Kim retired in 10 years. Can you go over the story of how you did that and what your plan was?
One of the biggest mistakes that people or couples make when they get married, I don't care if, boy marrying boy or girl marrying girl or tranny versus tranny, it's not none of my business. But let's say you get into a committed relationship. A lot of times people don't have what they call financial goals. They want to get rich, I want a safe, secure job.
You said that you and Kim retired in 10 years. Can you go over the story of how you did that and what your plan was?
One of the biggest mistakes that people or couples make when they get married, I don't care if, boy marrying boy or girl marrying girl or tranny versus tranny, it's not none of my business. But let's say you get into a committed relationship. A lot of times people don't have what they call financial goals. They want to get rich, I want a safe, secure job. But when I met Kim, I didn't want to be like my mom and dad. And they worked hard all their lives because they're good, hardworking, highly educated, important. Dad was a school teacher, mom was a nurse. Kim's father was a printer, he worked for a newspaper. Her mom was a stay-at-home mom, but they worked all their lives. So when I met Kim, I went, let's not do that. Let's set a goal to retire in 10 years. So when we got married, we had a goal to get married in 10 years. Now the thing about it is this, it's more than just a goal, it's how. And as I've said in many of my other videos, is that what makes you rich is not money, but skills. You have to have skills. So when I left the Marine Corps, I was a pilot and I flew. My wings here. To be a pilot, you have to fly. So to be an entrepreneur, you have to sell. So as I was getting out of the Marine Corps, my rich dad says, you, number one, have to learn how to sell. So when I left the Marine Corps, I got a job at Xerox. And I hated it. I hated selling. But for 4 years I struggled, and I had to stay there until I became number one. So every day I practiced selling. At night I would go and dial for dollars at a nonprofit, dialing for dollars. I was always practicing selling, raising money. Number one skill of an entrepreneur. The reason so many people are poor is they can't raise money. I mean, fucking obvious, isn't it? They can get a credit card, but they can't raise $1 million. So if you can't raise $1 million, you don't have the skills. The second thing was your education. And so the way Kim and I were going to do it, because that's already practicing it, as my rich dad said, you have to understand real estate, because real estate is the basis of wealth. And it's not so much real estate, it's debt. So when I was getting this before I met Kim, when I was getting out of the Marine Corps, I was like 26 years old. I had to take real estate courses to learn how to raise money and use debt. So I go to a banker and I borrow money. So the reason Kim and I could retire in 10 years was even before that, I'd already listened to my rich dad about, can I sell, which I could, can I raise capital, which I could, and can I raise debt to buy real estate, which I could. So Kim and I just bought real estate. The average person cannot go out there and buy it. They don't know how, they don't have the skill set. So let me say it again, is skills and practice and experience and education that make you rich, not your college education. So when Kim and I said we're going to set a goal to be rich in 10 years, that's how we did. Mm-hmm. So we did it through apartment houses. And when the markets crashed, it was good because when markets crash, everything goes on sale. And Kim and I had strong financial statements, which is the cash flow game, so we played the cash flow game. teaches you a financial statement. Your financial statement is your report card when you go in to see your banker. We walked in with our financial statements and said, we want to borrow $300 million. And the banker said, yes, because our financial statement said we knew what we were talking about. Your financial statement is your report card when you leave school. But the average person, even college graduates, have no idea what a financial statement is. So they couldn't raise and they can't raise money. So what made Kim and I rich was our past skills and knowing that we're real estate, we're not 401k. We weren't going to inherit money because our parents were poor. And we're going to do it through real estate and debt. So I make it sound simple, but it was pretty much premeditated. You know, from leaving the Marine Corps, I could fly. And by the way, his last two crashes, the Army Black Hawk hitting the airliner, typical Army pilot. I hate to say that, but it's, you know, Marine pilots are different than Army pilots. I don't know if you guys know that. And the reason, in my opinion, I could be wrong, there was a crash over the Potomac between an Army Black Hawk and all this, is because pilots for airlines are on IFR, instrument flight rules. So they're on their gauges looking at their instruments. Army guys are not trained IFR. Army guys are trained VFR, visual flight rules. So I'm listening to the traffic, and I could be wrong. The Army helicopter was on VFR, visual flight rules. The airline was on IFR. And the language and everything is completely different. You can hear it. So the Army pilot said, language at VFR, listen, not trained. In the Marine Corps, official statement is. So they couldn't raise and they can't raise money. So what made Kim and I rich was our past skills and knowing that we're real estate, we're not 401k. We weren't going to inherit money because our parents were poor. And we're going to do it through real estate and debt. So I make it sound simple, but it was pretty much premeditated. You know, from leaving the Marine Corps, I could fly. And by the way, his last two crashes, the Army Black Hawk hitting the airliner, typical Army pilot. I hate to say that, but it's, you know, Marine pilots are different than Army pilots. I don't know if you guys know that. And the reason, in my opinion, I could be wrong, there was a crash over the Potomac between an Army Black Hawk and all this, is because pilots for airlines are on IFR, instrument flight rules. So they're on their gauges looking at their instruments. Army guys are not trained IFR. Army guys are trained VFR, visual flight rules. So I'm listening to the traffic, and I could be wrong. The Army helicopter was on VFR, visual flight rules. The airline was on IFR. And the language and everything is completely different. You can hear it. So the Army pilot said, Roger, we call them, we got bogey in sight. It means we got the aircraft. The Army pilot had the wrong aircraft in sight. He didn't see the one he hit because he was VFR, where the airline pilots are IFR. And so those little differences, again, is skills and experience and training and education that make the difference. It makes a difference. So when I was in flight school in Florida, Pensacola, the Army flight school was right around the corner from us at Fort Rucker, Alabama. So Florida and Alabama are next to each other. And we always said, stay away from highways and railroad tracks, because Army pilots flew along the highways and railroad tracks, where Navy and Marine pilots flew IFR. The rules are different. So I'm not sure, and it's a terrible thing, so many people lost their lives. But when I was listening to the traffic, you know, as it replayed the whole thing, Army, VFR, airlines, IFR, boom. So again, it goes back to training, education, and experience. So I don't know where I'm going with all of that, but that's how, you know, what you learn is crucial and gives you a head start in life. So Kim and I could retire in 10 years because we planned on it, starting with education, experience, what we learned. I had to learn how to use debt. I had to learn how to raise capital. So every year I'm raising capital. So when Kenny Metro, I just called, he said, I need 100K. I go, done. I don't normally get the money, but I know I can raise it. And I have a foundation of money. I have gold, silver, and Bitcoin. And my job is to take gold, silver, and Bitcoin, convert it to cash. So I take gold and silver and Bitcoin. I'll sell it. I turn it to this, and it turns it into cash flow. That's how the rich get richer. That's the secret. It's not your college education. What is artificial intelligence? It's a college degree.
Was there anything that you and Kim had to sacrifice when you guys set this plan to retire in 10 years?
Why is there sacrifice? What was there to sacrifice? I mean, why would you ask that question? I want to know what the... So I don't sacrifice anything. It's not part of my vocabulary. I just go get what I want. So there's no sacrifice, you know what I mean? It's what I had to do was study, take classes, learn. We don't get to hang out with our goofy friends who are just watching YouTube or whatever they're watching. You know, it's, you choose your friends. Tim and I became really good friends. Tom Wheelwright, my advisors. Your friends change. And I don't hang out with lazy people. I don't hang out with people on welfare. I mean, if they want welfare, that's up to you. I don't want it. Just leave me alone. I want my independence. So anybody who's going to be woke and go broke and all we're victims, all this is Black Lives Matter. I've experienced racial discrimination too. I understand, but I don't let it get to me. And that's the reason I don't like Black Lives Matter is because they're victims. Well, slavery's been over for a long time, except you still go to school and learn to be a paid slave. That's your problem, not mine. So it's a choice, you know. So, oh, you're a racist. Well, if you're a Black Lives Matter person, you're just as much a racist as I am. I mean, you know, if you don't like white guys, you're a racist too. So that's why I sit there and I crack up this whole thing. And I don't care if you're a lesbian, caballero, ballroom dancer. You know, I mean, what you do in your spare time is up to you, baby. I prefer women, not men. You want to jump up with little boys? Knock yourself. But don't expect me to feel sorry for you. That's the ridiculous. That is so ridiculous. You know, slavery has been around for thousands of years. There's evidences of, in North Africa, they had white people as slaves, the blacks did. So when you say you're victims, that's bugs me. And I can understand it. You know, what happened to the guy, the buyer and all that stuff, Rodney, he was a drug dealer. He died or something, and then everybody, well, they picked on him because he's black. No, he was a drug dealer. But they wanted to change the story, change the narrative. But just look at the facts, know the truth. Just like I was saying, you know, this guy Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, I have no proof on it, but I think it cost $100 million to become Secretary of State. You had to donate to Trump's campaign. But I learned that game from my poor dad and my rich dad. That's the real game. In a little while we'll go out and I'll show you how I use it in real estate. But it all begins with you saying to yourself, I can't afford it. That's self-deprecating. That's putting yourself down. Never say I can't afford it or I can't do that. That makes you a poor, incompetent person. There's nothing wrong with asking for help and things like this, but don't expect a handout. You can expect a hand up, not a hand out. It's a big difference here, and that's what I'm saying. Another thing that poor people do is it doesn't do poor people, poor financial planners. Financial planners have their place in the world, but when they tell you something is safe, like, oh, the 60-40, 60% equity, 40% bonds, because bonds are safe, that is a lie. You gotta be really stupid to believe that. You know, that's why I'd rather have Bitcoin than a bond. But anyway, other thing is that people say, live below your means. Well, who wants to do that? Oh, that's exciting. You know, I can live in a nice house or I can live in a slum. No, I think I like the slum a lot better. And I've been to slums, they're not that bad. I've been to the slums of Mumbai, it was pretty exciting. Meet some interesting people in the slums, you know, so I got no problem with it. But when you constantly say, live below your means, that means my means aren't very high. So what I do instead is to live below my means. I want to expand my means. So if you see an income statement, a balance sheet, you have assets and liabilities. If I want to increase my means, I buy an asset. So I'll go buy, like when Kim and I needed some extra money, I found a mini storage in Levent Stalls, and I negotiated for a nothing down deal, and that mini storage put like $25,000 a month in our pockets. But again, it goes back to my skills. I could negotiate. I was doing real estate. I took real estate thing, so we had $25,000 a month coming in. That's not a lot of money, but it's about $250,000 a year in U.S. dollars. And that's not bad, you know. But you do that every other month. It's a lot of money. So the reason I was talking about it again is the trap is people work for this when you want cash flow coming. And so I'm buying assets, acquiring assets to expand my means so I have more cash coming in. So I was laughing with my friend because we can never spend the amount of money we have. I said, no, we make so much money, but we're going to give it all back in our funds and our foundations and all that. But it's just a game. We acquire assets, and poor middle class work for this crap. Assets throw this cash flow up, and poor middle class work for and save this year. That's why they're poor. Every year, every month, increase your cash flow. I'm at the point right now where I can't. Money just keeps piling up. I just give it to charities and things like that. But because I never say live below my means. Anybody tell you that, you have my problem to kick them. Okay? Thank you.
You can choose a life of ease and comfort, or you can choose a life of service and adventure. Which one of those, when you're 90 years old, are you going to be more proud of? Which one comfort, or you can choose a life of ease and comfort, or you can choose a life of service and adventure. Which one of those, when you're 90 years old, are you going to be more proud of?
How will you use your gifts? What choices will you make? Will you wilt under criticism? Or will you follow your convictions? When it's tough, will you give up? Or will you be relentless?
I was in New York City working for a quantitative hedge fund when I came across the startling statistic that web usage was growing at 2,300% a year. So I decided I would try and find a business plan that made sense in the context of that growth. And I picked books as the first best product to sell online. Basically, right now, if you can do things using a more traditional method, you probably should do them using the more traditional method.
If you look at the big ideas at Amazon, what we're really focused on is thinking long term, putting the customer at the center of our universe, and inventing. Big things start small. You can't skip steps. You have to put one foot in front of the other. Things take time. There are no shortcuts. But you want to do those steps with, passion and ferocity.
Think about the things that are not going to change over 10 years, and those are probably the big things. So, like, I know that in our retail business at Amazon, 10 years from now, customers are still going to want low prices. I know they're still going to want fast delivery, and I just know they're still going to want big selection. When you identify the big things, you can tell they're worth putting energy into because they're stable in time.
You have to earn the loyalty of customers every day. If you ever rest on the past or rest on your laurels, it may take a little while, but the whole thing will go away. As a civilization, we will have so many gifts, just as you as individuals have so many individual gifts as you sit before me. How will you use these gifts? And will you take pride in your gifts or pride in your choices? You can have a job, or you can have a career, or you can have a calling. And if you can somehow figure out how to have a calling, you've hit the jackpot, because that's the big deal. I was working at a financial firm in New York City with a bunch of very smart people, and I had a brilliant boss I much admired. I went to my boss and told him I was going to start a company selling books on the internet. He took me on a long walk in Central Park, listened carefully to me, and finally said, "That sounds like a really good idea, but it would be an even better idea for someone who didn't already have a good job. You can have a job, or you can have a career, or you can have a calling. And if you can somehow figure out how to have a calling, you've hit the jackpot, because that's the big deal."
I met Jeff Bezos 25 years ago, and he told me, "Dave, I want you to invest in my company. What are you doing?" "I'm going to start a bookstore in my garage." "Okay, and I'm going to put it online. People buy online, and I'm going to ship out of my garage. But if you invest in me, Dave, someday I'm going to be the richest man in the world. I'll do over $100 billion. First of all, there is no such thing as $100 billion 25 years ago. Statistically, there's no such thing. Countries didn't have 100. Our national debt wasn't $100 billion. And this dude's telling me at 26 years old that he's going to be the richest man in the world because he has a garage and the internet? That was his truth. You know? But he did not know it, and neither did I. But the difference between him and I is I was laughing, scoffing, and jesting at him, and he was already applauding himself, going, at the right way, at the perfect time, I'm going to make as much as I can as quickly. And I'm sitting there going, there's no way this is going to be a big business.
Do something you're very passionate about, and don't try to chase what is kind of the hot passion of the day. Seen in that light, it really was a difficult choice, but ultimately I decided I had to give it a shot. I didn't think I'd regret trying and failing, and I suspected I would always be haunted by a decision to not try at all. After much consideration, I took the less safe path to follow my passion, and I'm proud of that choice. As a young boy, I had been a garage inventor. I'd invented an automatic gate closer out of cement-filled tires, a solar cooker that didn't work very well out of an umbrella and aluminum foil, baking pan alarms to entrap my siblings. I'd always wanted to be an inventor, and she wanted me to follow my passion. There's a military phrase that I especially love, and it says, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And I have seen that in every endeavor I've ever been in. That's the kind of thing that really allows you to make progress. You know, you get certain gifts in life and you want to take advantage of those, but I guess my advice on adversity and success would be to be proud not of your gifts, but of your hard work and your choices. So, you know, you may be, the kinds of gifts you get, like, you know, you might be really good at math. It might be really easy for you. That's a kind of gift. But practicing that math and taking it to the next step, that could be very challenging and hard, and take a lot of sweat. That's a choice. You can't really be proud of your gifts because they were given to you. You can be grateful for them and thankful for them. But your choices, you choose to work hard. You choose to do hard things. Those are choices that you can be proud of. You can choose. We all get to choose our life stories, and it's the choices that define us, not our gifts. Everybody in this room has many gifts. I have many gifts. You can never be proud of your gifts because they're gifts. They were given to you. You might be, you know, tall, or you might be really good at math, or you might be extremely beautiful, or handsome, or, you know, there are many gifts, and you can only be proud really of your choices because those are the things that you are acting on. And one of the most important choices that each of us has, and you know this just as well as I do, is you can choose a life of ease and comfort, or you can choose a life of service and adventure. And when you're 80, which one of those things do you think you're going to be more proud of? You're going to be more proud of having chosen a life of service and adventure. There's never been a better time to be alive. I mean, it's just incredible the amount of inspiration that the world generates for me, and I think for a lot of people. It's insane, the amount of change and invention and opportunity. Your life, the life you author from scratch on your own, begins. How will you use your gifts? What choices will you make? Will inertia be your guide, or will you follow your passions? Will you follow dogma, or will you be original? Will you choose a life of ease, or a a life of service and adventure? Will you wilt under criticism, or will you follow your convictions? Will you bluff it out when you're wrong, or will you apologize? Will you guard your heart against rejection, or will you act when you fall in love? Will you play it safe?
Each of us has, and you know this just as well as I do, is you can choose a life of ease and comfort, or you can choose a life of service and adventure. And when you're 80, which one of those things do you think you're going to be more proud of? You're going to be more proud of having chosen a life of service and adventure.
There's never been a better time to be alive. I mean, it's just incredible the amount of inspiration that the world generates for me, and I think for a lot of people. It's insane, the amount of change and invention and opportunity. Your life, the life you author from scratch on your own, begins. How will you use your gifts? What choices will you make? Will inertia be your guide, or will you follow your passions? Will you follow dogma, or will you be original? Will you choose a life of ease, or a life of service and adventure? Will you wilt under criticism, or will you follow your convictions? Will you bluff it out when you're wrong, or will you apologize? Will you guard your heart against rejection, or will you act when you fall in love? Will you play it safe, or will you be a little bit swashbuckling? When it's tough, will you give up, or will you be relentless? Will you be a cynic, or will you be a builder? You be clever at the expense of others, or will you be kind?
Every time you figure out some way of providing tools and services that empower other people to deploy their creativity, you're really onto something. You know, you're very lucky if you have a career. A lot of people end up with a job.
If you don't love your work, you're never going to be great at it. Jules Verne, Mark Twain, Galileo, Newton, all the curious from the ages would have wanted to be alive, most of all, right now. As a civilization, we will have so many gifts, just as you as individuals have so many individual gifts as you sit before me. How will you use these gifts? And will you take pride in your gifts or pride in your choices?
July 16, 1995 was the day that in a small garage in a rented house, Jeff Bezos began his online bookseller business, Amazon. This was the day that began the starting point of what would eventually lead to one of the biggest American multinational technology companies that has impacted and changed the world as we know it.
So it really was a decision that I had to make for myself. And the framework I found, which made the decision incredibly easy, was what I called, which only a nerd would call, a regret minimization framework. So I wanted to project myself forward to age 80 and say, okay, now I'm looking back on my life. I want to have minimized the number of regrets I have. And you know, I knew that when I was 80, I was not going to regret having tried this. I was not going to regret having wanted, trying to participate in this thing called the internet that I thought was going to be a really big deal. I knew that if I failed, I wouldn't regret that. But I knew the one thing I And I think that's a very good, it's if you can project yourself out to age 80 and sort of think, what will I think at that time? It gets you away from some of the daily pieces of confusion. I left this Wall Street firm in the middle of the year. When you do that, you walk away from your annual bonus. And that's the kind of thing that in the short term can confuse you. But if you think about the long term, then you can really make good life decisions that you won't regret later. Most regrets, by the way, are acts of omission and not commission.
Jeff originally was at a good job with stable pay and yearly bonus. He didn't have to risk it all, but he realized the job with stable pay and yearly bonuses. He didn't have to risk it all, but he realized quickly that there were trends that were constantly popping up, explaining how big the internet was going to be. He is now worth over $122.3 billion and is living proof that if you believe in yourself, you can win. If we were to learn from Jeff's success, what trail of clues would there be? What did he do to separate himself from other entrepreneurs and skyrocket himself into ventures beyond our wildest dreams? Here are some insights into how and why Jeff Bezos has become successful.
When planning a business like this, I think to sort of look at what is the brand promise that you're going to make to customers. And the brand promise that you make has to actually coincide very, very closely with the things that you can deliver. And in our case, that led to the name of Amazon.com. It's basically Earth's biggest river, Earth's biggest bookstore. And we wanted to use this large selection to be able to build an authoritative store. Authoritative means a few things. Authoritative selection. Authoritative prices, and authoritative information about books so that you can make a purchase decision. And the internet allowed us to do all those things. We could have more selection. We could also have lower prices because we don't have to have retail real estate in high traffic areas that's very expensive. Inventory of books in those spaces is very expensive. We get to inventory our books at very low cost warehouse space. It's also possible to have more information online about the products than you could ever have in a physical shopping environment. So you can really build an authoritative store.
One of the biggest things to remember in business is what you are bringing to the table. What is the promise you are dedicating your brand to?